Hi, Derek. This is Professor Evans with feedback on your SA2, the rhetorical analysis. So, as always, whenever we start thinking about the feedback, we always want to think about what we were trying to do here. One of them was that we wanted to have an effective introduction that would kind of engage the audience. Next, we wanted a clear thesis that would direct the audience in terms of what you're going to do in your analysis. An effective structure, so how you're organizing things within the paper itself, what comes first, what comes second, and is there a logic behind that as well. Specific supporting examples for assertions that you're making about Harris's rhetorical strategies, kind of a fairly limited scope in terms of what worked, so doing a lot in depth as opposed to just a lot of surface. And then finally, not getting trapped into the meaning of the essay, of what he was arguing about, but rather what you're arguing about, which is a rhetorical strategy as well. Small thing, always remember you should probably always have a title as well, as much as you want to have a good thesis. You also want to have a title that would steer an audience as well. So literally, you could say, "In Defense of Torture, a rhetorical analysis of Sam Harris's article." That would at least tell the reader what's about to happen as well. Tiny point as well, remember that titles of essays are always going to be in quotation marks rather than italicized as well. I think you're thinking about the part of the prompt where it talks about the summary. So I do think that you do give me a pretty good summary in terms of this as well. But I don't know if it necessarily kind of gives me a kind of introduction, in the sense that an introduction should put a reader into a context as well as engage them as well. So you've got one, but I really don't know if it's engaging. The other kind of issue is that it's not necessarily about your topic, it's about Harris's topic. So possible other way of thinking about this is talk about what you're doing, rhetoric. Maybe that's where you start right here. So maybe it's some generalization about rhetoric. Maybe it's some generalization of about pathos and logos. These seem to be polar opposites of a scale. So maybe, combining those two seems interesting as well. Maybe that's what you talk about as a general. And then you move into the specifics, which are in this, where using pathos and logos together, Sam Harris is your example. And then you come into your thesis, which is the tip of your inverted pyramid as well in terms of your introduction. Interestingly enough, that your thesis says he uses strong emotion and ethical appeals to conjecture what blatant facts to create a dissonance in the reader that serves to make his viewpoint more palatable. This is a clear use of pathos and logos to convince Harris's audience. But later on in the paper, you're kind of clearly saying that he kind of came off as sarcastic, that maybe the article is not as, his ethos is not good, So I think that if you're thinking that his argument or his rhetorical techniques are not effective, that needs to be reflected within your thesis as well. I thought this section was good, where you're kind of talking about, bomb to Manhattan to normal to the hypothetical little girl, and then to millions of little girls. There's kind of a logical building with that right there, which is interesting. So that may go back to this pathos and logos together, and maybe you tease that out more as these are combined things. So he's logically getting you to kind of not only playing with your emotion, but it's also kind of saying, well, if this would work, what about this? What about this? So that might be interesting as well. Contradicts the existence of oppositions. Yeah. So now, I think this was good as well. So you're kind of doing this well. I think where we all of a sudden start kind of going south in this paper is after this point. Is that you have a fairly, I think you could talk about rhetoric, but a reasonable introduction right here. A reasonable thesis that could be slightly sharpened. I think some points about pathos, which here are good. And then you go into ethos, which you haven't even mentioned up here. And then you're saying that it's bad, that his ethos is bad because it's in the Huffington Post. I think a lot of people are doing, I'm interested that so many people are also in the Huffington Post is terrible. I don't know if it may not be the New York Times, but it's not, the supermarket, tabloids. I think it does have some credibility as well. And basically his position is that of a journalist, and he's arguing a point in a blog right there. So I think kind of attacking his credibility on that point, I don't know is necessarily the best route to go. It's, in the same way that, a opinion piece in the New York Times is there, you'll read someone like Frank Bruni, he's talking about lots and lots and lots of different subjects that he may or may not be an expert on, but he's offering an opinion on. And I think that's the same thing that's going on here with Harris as well. I think this is a reflection of the part of the prompt where it's talking about you should think about audience. I get the impression that this might be woven into the text rather than a separate section, because again, it's not. Do you even mention audience in here? You do mention audience, right? Convince there, but you're analyzing the audience as opposed to just saying here that they've convinced them as well. So I don't know if this is entirely necessary as well. Or then finally it comes down to, this tone again. I got the impression that this seems to be more opinion. I think that if you feel that, you need to back this up a little bit more. No, because I think where you're saying you found it a poor choice for an opinion paper, I think he's making himself much more reasonable. If you're saying that he's coming off being arrogant or something like that, here he's saying no, I'm open-minded. I totally want to be found out as being wrong, but you'll have to poke holes in my argument first. So I think this is an ethos moment, definitely so. But I think it's actually a fairly smart piece of rhetoric. I mean, he's not coming off saying, I'm right. He's saying, I want to be wrong. That's making him much more sympathetic. So I think you may want to rethink this one as well. All right. Oh, no, here's a whole nother paper down here. I hope this is saying the same thing. I think so. I think this is saying the same thing twice. I'm not quite sure why you've got these multiple versions in here. I hope this one is I hope this is your latest one as well. All right. I hope this was helpful.